All right, let's welcome in friend of the program, fellow Cuse great, Bleacher Report's own, and the best guy doing the draft, period. And listen, I don't care who you're watching for the draft. I don't care who you listen to. If you're not listening to this guy, you don't know what the hell you're doing. A couple of years ago, it was Schmitz, and it was him. Schmitz is out. He's in. And if you're not listening to him, then go do something else. Don't even follow the draft. Thanks, Jon Wasserman. He joins us right now. Thanks for taking a couple minutes. We appreciate it.
Of course. What's up, fellas?
Before we get to anything, I just want to get this out of the way because people are saying that this is a really weak draft. And I want to get your take on that because, you know, people have said that before, the Anthony Edwards draft, and that turned out you got Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and Halliburton out of that draft. Do you see this as one of the weakest drafts you've covered?
It's only a weak draft. You know, it's being perceived that way because nobody can identify who the actual stars are going to be. And so I think teams are probably in the late lottery happy where they are. And there's going to be a lot of pros in this draft. I mean, I think it's pretty deep. It's just the guys at the top don't really align with the typical guys at the top of a normal draft. And so, like, you know, that 2013 draft, that was my first year working at Bleacher Report. It kind of reminds me of a similar situation where you don't know. It's just tougher to identify who's going to be the best player in this draft. But of course, then you have Giannis going 15 and Rudy Gobert going 27. Like, there is going to be guys who make all-star teams from this draft. They're probably just not going to be in the first 3 picks. And so there's going to be a lot of teams looking to trade down. I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams looking to trade up. So it's going to make for a tough trade market. But yeah, there's a lot of guys I like in this draft. And like, you know, a team like the Knicks, who is 24 and 25 and 38, those are good spots to be in terms of value. And so I'm not willing to go out of my way right now and say this draft sucks. I think there's going to be a lot of pros. But again, it's just tougher to spot who they are at this point.
So basically, you wouldn't compare this to the Anthony Edwards class. But you remember everyone was saying, oh, this is a weak class, terrible class. And we got 3 terrific players, including the 2 of the top 3 picks, right? Where ended up being, you know, a LaMelo. I don't know if he's made an all-star team, but he's an all-star caliber talent. Yeah. You think it's more of like you're going to find some hidden gems in, you know, 12 to the 25 or whatever range, then you're going to find the top players in the top 5 picks, basically.
It's all right. It's a little different. Like, at least we knew, like, Edwards was, you know, a big time 5-star, you know, recruit, and LaMelo obviously was a huge name. This year, like, the guys at the top we're looking for international guys who normally would honestly normally be late lottery grades. But there are guys when you go down the board who, you know, of course, everybody would say has potential, but there are a lot of guys who have upside. Right now, we just don't know who's going to reach it. But there are definitely plenty of guys who, if they keep developing and they go to the right situation, which is always such a key part of these guys' development, going to a team where they can play to their strengths and the coaches are like good for them and they're just playing like a good role and they develop on the right track. There's going to be guys who make all-star teams this year. But compared to that particular draft with Anthony Edwards and LaMelo, I mean, I know Wiseman was a total bust, but those guys,
he was a big name coming in.
He was a big name coming in, right? But those guys, like, I mean, I felt pretty confident that LaMelo and Edwards were going to be stars at some point, and I don't really feel that level of confidence based on who's projected to go at the top of this draft. No, I'll say I've been doing this. We've been doing mocks every week for the last 3 months now, and I talked to all these teams. We think there's a top group of like Zachary Reese-Shea, Alex Sarr, Donovan Clingham, Reed Shepherd. Like, we think those are the guys who are projected to go at the top. It wouldn't shock me if like we hear names that we just totally didn't see coming and that these pre-draft narratives are totally smoke.
So let's dive into some of these guys. And you just mentioned a few of them. Now, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this guy's name right. Is Reese-Shea? It's not Reese-Shea?
Zachary Reese-Shea.
Reese-Shea. Okay. So let's start with him and Sarr, since they're 2 of the guys that they're talking about going number 1 potentially. Tell me a little bit, because obviously, you know, we're 2 guys from America. We have no idea. We haven't seen these guys play. I don't know I haven't seen a game that they've played once. So tell me, what would teams be getting with both these guys? Give me a little bit of a scouting report on both of them.
So Reese-Shea is kind of like a safe pick at number 1. 6'9" wing, big time athlete, shot around 40% from 3 this year. Really quick defensively. I think you package that all together and you get like a high floor, a guy who can come in right away and be a spot-up guy, knock down jumpers, finish plays, defend the point of attack, cover ground defensively. The question with him is he going to develop on the ball? Is he going to develop any creativity to his game? Is he going to be in pick-and-roll situations? Really, when he plays right now with J.L. Bohr overseas, he just stands around a lot. And that's just kind of his role. He's also 18, 19 years old playing on a pro team. That's kind of typical of a wing player his age in a pro league. So there's a little bit of guesswork in terms of how much he's going to develop his off the dribble game, his passing, his playmaking, and creating his own shot. If he's going to get his own shot right now, it's usually like a tough step back. He doesn't have many moves in his bag, and his handle isn't super tight against a set defense. So I think in this draft, when there's a lot of uncertainty, you're looking at the Hawks. You got to get this right. You can't get a total bust. And I think Risacher has that high floor. He also fits with what Atlanta could use. They have two high-level creators in Trey and DeJounte Murray. So Risacher, for now, right. We'll see what happens down the road. Although I really don't think they're going to end up trading any of them because they're not going to get a player back of either of their caliber. But that's a conversation for another time. But I think Risacher is just like a safe play in a draft where it's tough to identify who the good players are going to be. And then Alex Sarr has theoretically the highest ceiling in the draft because he's got the offensive upside, 7'1". You see him knock down threes. You see him handle the ball on the open floor. You see him hit turnarounds from the elbows. He's obviously athletic around the basket. And then defensively, there's like kind of a sure thing. Like at 7'1", he slides his feet like a wing. He's going to be, we say, oh, this guy can guard all five positions all the time. It's kind of like a bullshit type of cliche buzzword, but he really can. Like he can protect the rim. He can definitely guard fours and threes. And when he's in space guarding pick and rolls, he can switch out and get really low and slide his feet. So I think that's a lock that you're getting with Sarr. And then you're just kind of hoping and you're betting on the offensive versatility to just kind of like slowly come alive. Like he could do all these things, but he's pretty raw. He doesn't do them consistently. So again, there's a little bit of guesswork in terms of how he's going to develop over the next couple of years. Is that 27% three ball going to suddenly rise to 35%? Are the flashes of ball handling, which you see maybe once a game, going to happen more frequently throughout games? Like, is he going to be able to get his own shot more? Is he going to be able to finish more against tougher opponents around the basket? Because right now he's a little thin. He's 19 years old. He gets a shot blocked a little too easily. So there's a little bit of guesswork in terms of his offensive development. But this guy can do everything. It's just, is he going to be able to do it consistently on a regular basis?
So what I'm seeing from you is it seems to me that with Sarr, and I read your player comps, and I saw that you had like Evan Mobley as a player comp for Sarr. Now, I've also seen a lot of people have Jaren Jackson as a player comp. So what you're saying right now, it seems to me you're not as confident in the shooting as the people who are saying Jaren Jackson. You're more of the defensive side, the defensive upside for Sarr. Is that kind of accurate?
Those guys are like the same, they're all the same archetype. And then defensively, they're all very comparable. I'd say Jaren Jackson was further ahead offensively at the same age. And Mobley too. Like Mobley in high school, was handling the ball a lot more. But even still, like Mobley offensively is still a work in progress. And Jaren Jackson kind of transformed into like this crazy shot maker. Yeah. I can't picture Sarr doing that, at least not anytime soon. So he's kind of stuck in between the both of them offensively in terms of where he is, like how refined and polished he is. But defensively, they're very comparable in terms of being guys who could probably be interchangeable between the 4 and 5, and they really switch on to any position.
Well, it seems like both him and Mobley, their jump shot developing to a level where they can shoot 35, 40% from three is going to unlock their offensive game, both Sarr and Mobley. So, I feel like that's probably why you comp them. Like Jaren Jackson's already a 40% three-point shooter. He kind of came into the league as a really good shooter. And shot blocker. But I feel like overall defensively, Mobley is better than Jaren Jackson just in terms of guarding space. So it seems like the way you're describing Sarr is just like more in that mold.
Yeah. Again, it's like they're the same type of players. Player comps are, I hate making them. And listen, teams reach out all the time and ask me, like, who does this guy remind you of? That's a very common question I get. And a lot of general managers tell their scouts, like, I want you to come up with a player comp for each guy. It's really just to paint a picture of what type of a guy he's going to be in the NBA. Right. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Mobley or the next Jaren Jackson. Right. What type of guy? He's going to be a guy who...
We're taking it as you're saying he's going to be the next Mobley. So that's official. That's what it is.
If this were a stronger class, would you see both those guys still going in the top 5?
No.
Where do you think they would fall? Still lottery, though?
Late lottery.
Okay. Between the two of them, who do you like more? As I know you said Risacher has a higher floor and Sarr has a higher ceiling, but if you were the Hawks GM and you were going to take the number 1 pick, who would you take?
It's so close. And I'm still putting together my final board literally right now. I have to submit it later today. And they're like neck and neck. I have them right next to each other. And I really think it just depends on what roster I'm drafting them to. I think I'd probably take more of a chance with Sarr
Yeah,
just
me too.
Because I talked to Atlanta and they disagreed with me a little bit, but I kind of comp Ricochet to a guy like, maybe best case, like a Michael Porter, like a Harrison Barnes, like guys who are not going to be number one options in your offense. I just can't picture that transformation from what I see now based on just how much he is just a spot up guy. And listen, I think he could be like a number 3 option, just not a top 2 guy. I think with Sarr, there's just more upside to unlock, at both ends of the floor. And it's just more of a, listen, if I get it wrong, I'm not losing my job here. And Atlanta, obviously Landry feels there's a lot more riding on this than I do. But, if it was me, I'd kind of swing for the fences a little bit more of a Sarr.
Do you think because of sorry, Justin, do you think because of the strength of this draft, teams are going to pick more for need as opposed to best player available?
Yeah, definitely. That's going to play a big role, I think, because it's really hard to decipher. It's like hard to make rankings right now. I mean, everybody's kind of, normally teams do tiers, and like this year's tier is like one big tier. Everybody's like the same. So I think tiebreakers are going to be determined by who fits best with my team. What do we need? Because nobody really has confidence saying like, okay, player A is better than player B. There's just a lot of guys who are stuck in the same tier, and the way they're going to end up identifying who they like best is probably, who fits, what positions do we need, how are they going to fit with the guys we already have in our team.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you overall with Sarr. Like if I'm drafting at the top of the draft, I'm going to try to take a swing if I can take a swing. You know what I mean? Unless I'm like so close, I got lucky and I was like, I had an injury like Memphis obviously had John Moran out this year. They're really a playoff team that, maybe draft more for need. But if I'm like a team like the Hawks or someone like that, I would go for the swing. But, listen, we've seen before with Ricochet, you saying like you're not sure if he can develop into that player, and most guys probably don't. But then we've also seen like the Pascal Siakams who come into the league who are not that type of player, and now he's like a maybe not a 1 option, but he's probably a 2 option on a good team. So it can happen. So I guess listen, there's so many different outcomes with these things, but I think the more if you're going to take a swing at a high ceiling player, at 1, I think I agree with you with Sarr. So that's my thing on that. Let's go to a couple of the guys on UConn real quick. Let's go to the UConn guys, Castle and Klingon. I'll start with Castle, and I have Alexander. You could take Klingon. Now, right now, Castle's basically in hiding, as we know. Okay, I think all these teams have an APB out for him. They don't know where the hell he is. He's not doing workouts for anyone. Okay, we saw a couple of things at the combine. All we've seen is this 1 year at UConn where he averaged 11 points per game and he shot 26% from the field. And he's one of these tantalizing, athletes, bodies, like defensive ability that he has. He can play make a little bit. Do you see him? What's your feeling on him? And do you see him potentially being a primary shot creator at the NBA level?
Yeah, so in high school, he played point guard. And like that was the draw to him. He was a 6'6" ball handler. And then he goes to UConn and they're just kind of loaded. And so he plays a little bit more spotting up. He did get some ball screens. I'm not buying the on-ball stuff. He's not like super quick off the dribble. Creating his own shot, I'd say is not a strength. And to me, if you're like a lead ball handler, you got to be able to shoot off the dribble. And he's so far behind with his shot right now. So the way and this is my favorite part about these draft discussions is we could all be looking at the same guy and picture 2 different NBA players. So like the teams that really like Castle, and he could easily go 3 or 4, I would say 4 to San Antonio is where I have him going right now. And that's, if you take him 4, it's because you envision the high school version of him when he's a 6'6" ball handler who can really create shots for teammates really well. And then you hope the shot obviously develops a little bit, but defensively he's a monster. And so you kind of you see all this versatility coming together and you really are betting on the on-ball stuff and the shooting improving. I kind of don't see that. I'm just not buying him at the NBA level being that on-ball guy. I'm buying him as Josh Hart. I mean, I think that's kind of the role he played for UConn. Like, attack physically downhill, crash the offensive glass, move the ball, make good decisions, guard the other team's best wing, and just kind of be that like elite glue guy. And so that's the way I see him.
That type of motor as Hart does, though, because what makes Hart special really is the energy and the motor that he plays with. Do you see Castle with that type of motor?
Yeah, I mean, he's got like his background checks, everybody that you talk to him about his family, his work ethic and all that stuff. Like this guy just wants to win, and he's not a me first guy. I mean, he was pretty unselfish. I mean, I know part of it at UConn, he passed up on open shots because he can't make them from outside, but he really, he doesn't seem to care about stats, and every coach he's ever had just totally raves about him. So he doesn't have like Hart's, outgoing personality. He's more of a quiet guy, but I think he's willing to embrace that role. However, his camp, at least, although I haven't heard this from my own personal sources, his camp, when we say he's going into hiding, wants him to be used more on the ball, and that's why he's being a little bit more selective with his workouts. He doesn't want to go to a team that already has a lead ball handler. But let's be honest here, most of these teams in the lottery already have starting point guards, so he can't be too picky. The Spurs would seem like an obvious fit for him and a preference for him because everybody wants to play with Victor. Everybody always wants to play with San Antonio. They have a great development system. And then in San Antonio, they don't really have a point guard. So he can kind of play both roles, that glue guy, and get more reps on the ball.
Yeah, and with Klingon, I mean, I know he had 2 dominant years at UConn, obviously, but do you think he's a legit offensive prospect as well, or you think he's more of a rim runner who's just got a very high defensive ceiling? Like, where do you see him fitting in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you take Klingon, you just really have to bank on what he does well right now, and then anything else is bonus. Like, you draft Klingon for rim protection. You draft him for a 7'2", 280-pound guy who changes, opposing teams' decisions. Like, you don't come into the paint anymore when he's in there, regardless of how many shots he blocks. Like, he changes the game without picking up stats defensively. So that's what you're banking on with him. Offensively, he's going to get you easy baskets. He's just too powerful around the basket. And yeah, he'll get you some low post hoops. I don't picture him being a guy teams like feature in the half court and say, everybody stand around while we give Klingon the ball and let him go to work. Like, he's just not sharp enough in that respect. And I'll say, he shows up at the NBA Combine and he starts shooting threes and he looks pretty good. I mean, like, I know not to put too much stock into a guy shooting 1-on-0 in an empty gym, and we fall for it every year.
We've seen Mitch do it on tapes, haven't we?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting
for that to happen in game, to be honest.
Right. Any minute we're going to have the Ben Simmons one come out. But like, I promise you, he was very convincing, and he definitely swayed a couple teams. And he says all along, like, I could shoot threes, I just don't need to at Connecticut, and Hurley's not going to let me do it when I have Cam Spencer and all these other guys and Caravan that can knock him down, and my role is to play inside. But he does have a comfort level from outside, and he's a very good passer, at least from like a standstill position, kind of facilitating away from the basket. These are like bonus stuff. You're drafting Klingon to protect the rim, to give you a defensive presence, change your team's defensive identity. But there's no doubt he's in play at number 1. I mean, I know Atlanta likes him. I've talked to Atlanta. They definitely like him. The question is, how much? Are you willing to take him 1? Can you trade down a couple spots, maybe with San Antonio, and take him at number 4, which would make more sense to me. Right. I'm not a guy who would take him number 1. Like, I just don't.
They also have 2 centers. So I know Capella is like going to probably be out soon, but they I know Kongu they drafted, he's been okay, but for me with Klingon, so offensively you see him as like a Hartenstein, like good passer, maybe he's going to become a better shooter type of thing, but like, do you see him in that area potentially?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like Hartenstein, in the fact that you're not going to he'll get you buckets like here and there, within the flow of the game, right? But you're not going to like set up plays for him offensively, right? And so, to have a guy that limited offensively, I just can't get my mind around to take him that early, unless you really think he's Rudy Gobert and he could be a defensive player of the year. I think he's a little bit overrated in terms of his defensive upside, but there's no question, you take a guy that size, he's going to change the game a little bit defensively, and obviously he played a role in Connecticut's 2 national championships. So I think he's a very safe pick. I think there's no doubt he's a good starting center in the NBA. But at number 1 overall, I just can't get him. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, it seems like the way you describe Sarr has more defensive and offensive upside. So it just seems like if you're going to be picked number 1, you're going to take a 7+ footer. It seems like Sarr would be a safer bet to be a good, a better pro than Klingon to begin with.
He just has more upside. I think Sarr has more like bust potential. Like, he tries to, sometimes Sarr pretends like he's a small forward, and he's just not. He's just not that guy right now. He's also like 210 pounds at 7'1". Right. So there is some bust potential with Sarr, where 280, 7'7" wingspan with Klingon, like productive every time he steps on the floor. I just can't see him not being a good starting center, where I could see Sarr getting beat up down low, and suddenly the shot is not coming around the way people hope it would, and then it's like, all right, what does he do here for us? I've had executives tell me that like they're a little bit turned off by Sarr because some games he's just not there. You just don't see him. And like, I guess that's fine for a 19-year-old, but not a 19-year-old you're thinking about taking number 1 overall.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of absolutely enormous centers. Let's move to Zach Edey. I know 2-time player of the year, dominated college basketball, but is he actually good, or is he just a product of being huge in college?
He's good at what he does. I mean, I think that's the best way to say it. Like
what?
Exactly.
Being a pick and roll finisher, an offensive rebounder, and a low post scorer. And some teams, 15, 20 minutes a game, that could be valuable to certain teams who don't get a lot of easy baskets, who don't have like a physical presence down low. And listen, I promise you right now, teams have talked themselves into him. Like there's a rumor going around. A scout texted me the other day where everybody's saying that he's going in the lottery. Like people have talked themselves into Edey. He's also super competitive. So I think he's going to help himself out. Like,
is he going to be able to guard though? You know what I mean? Like that thing, like, like you said, we talked about Gobert. Gobert gets played off the floor in the playoffs a lot of times, and he's the best defensive center at that, in that archetype in the league. Edey, I just don't see the foot speed with him, especially defensively. Is he going to be able to keep up if he's not, and he's not the defensive player that Klingon is, right?
Not even close.
So how is that going to translate?
So that's why I personally don't have him as like a 35-minute per game guy. I like him coming off the bench, giving your team like a different look. I mean, how many guys could bring off a 7'5", 300-pounder off the bench? I don't like him playing full-time minutes, right? And there are going to be certain teams that his team plays against where, you can't play him in the last 10 minutes of the game. And so for me, that's why I don't have him super high. But I guess in this draft, it's like, let's take a chance that he can eventually move his feet quick enough. And his conditioning, by the way, has improved a lot. Like compared to where he was last year, he definitely moves easier. And then you see him at the combine going through athletic tests, and he put up better numbers in almost every category than Klingon in terms of lateral foot speed, in terms of verticals, sprint time. So he's moved better. I'm not buying him being a full-time guy. And he's going to get exposed if they bring him away from the basket here and there. But that type of size around the basket against certain teams is going to affect him in some way or form. But no, I don't really see like an upside guy here. I see the draw to Edey is he just gives you something different that nobody else can really match.
Right. I'm gonna give you my player comp on him, actually. I'm going to give you a little blast in the past here, except I think this guy's a little bit of a shooter, but I'm going to say Rick Smits. That's kind of who I see from a big standpoint, has touch around the hoop, can score, can give you something there. But, he's bigger than Rick, obviously. And Rick's probably a little better shooter. But the mobility, if Rick Smits was playing today, I don't think he'd be able to play defense is my issue.
I got to go back and watch some Rick Smits tape because it's been a couple decades. It's been a couple decades since I watched
the Duncan Dutchman.
Yeah, he gave me nightmares when I was a kid.
No. Both of us. Okay, so let's go to the other big school that just lost their coach. Let's go to Kentucky and those two guys. I'll start with Shepherd, and Alexander will take Dillingham. So for me, let's just call it like it is, okay? I don't think I've ever seen a 6'3" white dude who's not an explosive athlete and not a point guard be mocked this high in the draft. Now, that's not saying he's not a good player. He's a good player. But tell me why he should be drafted. Like, I'm seeing some mocks where he's drafted in the top 5, even as early as 3. Tell me why he should be drafted that high.
I would do it too. I have him top 3 on my board. I think he's so good.
Okay, let's hear it.
I think sometimes we just get too carried away with like the traditional laws of upside. I think because we've never seen a guy like that. It was the same thing with Luka. Everyone's like, we've never seen like a white European, 6'7" guy be that good. He's not athletic. He's not going to be able to blow by guys. He's not going to be able to finish. Like, I just watched Reed Shepherd do it against very high quality opponents. He also did it in high school too. We nitpicked Halliburton before that draft, and it's just the same type of thing. Like, we put too much stock into measurements sometimes, into athleticism. Like, some guys are just really, really good. Sometimes you just have to simplify it. He's so good at basketball. He's so good at, timing his moves and footwork. And obviously he's an elite shot maker, which helps compensate for all the lack of athleticism inside the arc. By the way, highest max vertical at the NBA Combine.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
He also had, he's 6'1" in socks. He blocked 20 shots this year. Like, he's a better athlete than he gets credit for. He processes the game better than anybody else. He's obviously an elite shooter. And I think he didn't get the on-ball reps that he would have if he went to a different team. I don't know how many guys we can go off of Kentucky who are better than the NBA.
Yeah, literally every single one.
I mean, every single one. I think at some point we have to put stock into that and stop letting them drop in the draft. And so I went back and watched some high school tape, and man, he's got some burst. Like, he can blow by. He's got some craftiness. I'm so tired of putting too much stock into the athleticism. I know this is a different type of comparison because Jalen Brunson was older, but we kind of nitpick Jalen Brunson for the same stuff. Like, he's too slow. He's too small.
Yeah.
He's not really a point guard. He's a scorer. Like, what are we doing here? He's so good at basketball. And Reed Sheppard is just so skilled, smart. At this point, I'm just buying stock into like how effective he was at Kentucky. And I'm just betting on him going to figure it out in the NBA.
Gathering what you're saying, it seems to me he's one of your favorite guys in the draft, maybe if not your favorite guy in the draft. And until you mentioned Brunson, I was just going to play devil's advocate because you mentioned Doncic, you mentioned Halliburton, but those guys are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's 6'3". That's my only. The athleticism nowadays, as we've seen a million times, you don't have to be super athletic to be super successful in the NBA now if you know how to play basketball at a high level. So I don't doubt that for a second. And I saw a few Kentucky games this year, and he was very impressive. He didn't play well, obviously, in the tournament game, but neither did Dillingham. And that doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But you said 6'1" in socks. That would be the one thing for me. And Brunson was more of a point guard in college than he was. He's more of a combo two guard. Brunson did it, when you're a primary ball handler and he had to do all those things, you knew that at least that was going to translate. It was just going to be whether he can, now obviously I don't think anyone, including his mother, thought he was going to do what he's doing now, but he's able to the reason he's so good is because he's able to make such difficult shots and create space for himself to get those shots. You obviously think Sheppard could do the same?
Not at the same level, but at the same idea. Like, we also have to remember, there's nobody else in the draft. I don't think that if I'm projecting down the line, I don't think that Sheppard has the same potential as Brunson or as Halliburton, but nobody else in this draft does either. So we have to remember where the bar is. But I do think that we kind of pigeonholed him, boxed him into this, connector role. Like, he's going to be a spot up shooter and he'll move the ball, but he's not going to be an on-ball guy. I think he's going to be used on the ball way more than he was at Kentucky, and we're going to see that he can do things that we didn't know he could do. Like, if you go back and watch his pick and roll tape, I mean, he can blow by. He can change direction. He can separate into step backs. He's got a tough finishing package. Like, he can do all these things, and yet the size is going to limit him. The guy's going to be able to contest his shot easier, and that's why I'm a little bit lower on him in terms of, okay, how high is his ceiling really? I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star, but I really can't find many guys in this draft that are. And normally, he wouldn't be. I have him top 3 in my personal board. He wouldn't be top 3 in my personal board in any other draft. He'd probably be, again, late lottery. But this draft is just a little bit weaker at the top, and he gets a little bit of a bump. But I think to box him into this, like, okay, he is going to be a spot-up shooter, and just basically a role player.
Luke, basically. He's not Svi Mikhailuk, okay?
Get out of here with that, Svi Mikhailuk. I mean, I think like he could be like a better DiVincenzo.
Okay. DiVincenzo, I feel like you mentioned the 42-inch vertical, which I didn't realize, watching him at Kentucky, I didn't see that type of athleticism. He's not unathletic, but I didn't see that type of athleticism. Obviously, Dante is a pretty athletic guy. So you see that kind of the athleticism playing in like that.
Yeah, it's different types of athleticism. Like, I don't think like DiVincenzo has some like poster dunks on dudes. Sheppard's not going to do that. But he can use his athleticism in different ways. Like 20 block shots at 6'1", that doesn't happen. I mean, that doesn't happen at all. He can really get up there. And there's a difference between like being able to jump high and then have explosiveness.
Yep. All right. You sold me.
Yeah. And I mean, I was going to say after that whole spiel you just gave, which completely sold me on Reed Sheppard, that watching Kentucky this year, Dillingham looked like he was probably the better prospect. So coming into the draft process, when I started seeing Sheppard mocked like 5-6 picks ahead of him, I was surprised, but you obviously just sold me on. But talk to me about Dillingham, why you think he is not the better of the 2 Kentucky prospects.
I just think that like with Rob, 164 pounds, it's just tough to be super effective, I think, as a score-only guy. So actually his measurements are identical to Trae Young's. 164.
Wow.
Not like by the inch and by the pound. 164, 6'1" in socks, 6'3" wingspan, and he's not like a super athlete, but he's nowhere near the level of playmaker that Trae is.
Right.
So, there's just a very little margin for error. I mean, he has to rely on hitting so many tough shots, and granted, he's very good at doing that. But at 164, it's going to be even tougher in the NBA. He's not a great finisher. He's just going to have his shot diet is just like tough pull-ups, tough step backs. He's a very good ball handler. He can get his own shot easily. I just think to basically be valued strictly for scoring, he's going to get crushed on defense, by the way.
Can he be a Quickly type? But Quickly is a good defender. That's the only issue with it.
Quickly has a 6'9" wingspan and was bigger, and he's going to get destroyed defensively. And he got destroyed defensively this year in college. And like kind of, Trey is kind of like a target for other teams. And I just think it works for Trey because he's so dynamic offensively, not just with the scoring, but a guy who could lead the league in assists. That's not Rob. I mean, Rob's not going to come close to that, So he's a scorer. He's like I think Lou Williams is kind of the top for him.
Yeah.
I mean, in the worst case, is like a Bones Highland. They're both that same skinny little frame, and what happens if Rob's shot's not on? Like, I just don't see. He's the type of guy who, if his shot's not on, there's some guys that's okay, but if his shot's not on, he's probably hurting you because he's taking tough ones and he's getting crushed defensively.
So he's like a microwave guy off the bench. That's how you see him.
That's how I see him. I don't see him as a starting point guard. I just don't think he's a good enough playmaker, facilitator. But then at the 2 guard spot, like who's he going to guard? So I think you really need to find the right spot for him. Like the perfect spot for him, I think, at least like a perfect backcourt guy for him is like Amen Thompson. And it's the same thing with Reed Shepherd, more so for Reed Shepherd. But with Amen Thompson, like at least he can guard the other team's 2 guards. And then Rob can at least settle back and guard the other team's smaller guy. But you got to find the right fit for Rob being that small and really being more of a secondary playmaker.
All right. So speaking of guys who don't play much defense, I want to talk about a guy who I actually think to me was one of the more impressive college players this year, on offense especially. Averaged 22 a game, 40% from 3, took Tennessee deep into the tournament. I'm a big fan of Dalton to connect. And, a lot of people say defense is going to be an issue for him, but he's got great size for a guard. He can shot make. Him being 23 years old is sometimes an issue for these teams. They don't like old players coming out of college, but when you go to college and you gain your confidence, sometimes that's a better thing. You get better at basketball. What's your take on him? And he was really good in a good SEC conference this year as well. Are you high on him? Like, I think he could be one of the best players in the draft, to be honest with you. Are you high on him like I am, or do you think his defense is that big of an issue?
I'm not so much worried about his defense. I'm a big guy on like history, and history says don't draft 23-year-olds in the lottery.
Damn it!
If you go down the list, and I've done it before. Go down the list of guys drafted at 23 years old. The best ones, I don't know, it's that magic number of 23. The best ones are Cam Johnson and Malcolm Brogdon and Buddy Hield. There's nobody. That's it. So
but would you say it's different now with the transfer portal? Because like these guys are going to be a little older this year because this time around, because without the transfer portal they would have come out at 22 at this school.
Well, also COVID.
Yeah, I mean, but like even if he came out last year, I don't know. Listen. Here's my problem. I like Dalton Connect, by the way. I think he's a first-round pick. I think he's a lottery pick, and he's a safe pick. There's no doubt in my mind he's a 15-year pro, and he's going to help somebody. I just don't see upside. So.
Okay.
He's going to be a shot maker. Like he's a very polished scorer and shooter. My personal preference, I like in that range. I'd rather take a swing on somebody who does a little bit more. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to, pump in 20 points a game in the NBA. I think he's going to be a complimentary guy, and I like wings who can pass, who can play make, and he really is not going to give you any of that. So he's very one dimensional in terms of what he brings to your table, but what he brings is valued. He brings shot making, and there's no doubt he's one of the best shooters in the draft, and not just spot ups like running off screens, pulling up. If he goes to a good spot where he could just play to his strengths and do that, he's going to be a starting small forward or starting shooting guard for a long time. But I just can't picture like any all-star potential. I just see a solid starting player. And I think in this draft that's fine to take in the late lottery.
Okay, and so now I'm out on him. But speaking of those types of players, another guy that I don't like this guy as much, but I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. What you've talked to with different NBA teams, and are any of these teams concerned with Jared McCain's like TikTok presence and how I wouldn't be concerned. I'm just asking. I feel like he's obviously very popular on social media. He's very active on social media. Are teams worried about his focus or his work ethic? Is he going to be all in on basketball, or is it going to be, he's just as much in on TikTok and dancing and stuff like that as he is into basketball?
Nah, people love him. And
Okay.
he's not, I know he's like that on camera. On the floor, he's tough as shit. And he's super bright, like super high character. There may be like an old school executive out there who is like, who is this kid? And the fingernail painting and stuff. Like, there are probably going to be some traditionalists, old school.
That stuff's nonsense. Yeah, like, he's a good player. Like, I don't care if he paints his nails. I'm just saying, like, it's more about the time you're spending. Is he going to be all in on basketball, or is he going to be like, okay, I'm going to do TikTok because he's, listen, he's very popular. He probably makes a lot of money off of TikTok as well. So are you going to be all in on basketball, or are you going to be like, okay, I got to do my social media and do basketball?
No, I don't think that's going to be a problem with him when you talk to him.
Okay.
He is very, he gets it. I mean, he has fun off the floor, and yeah, he's involved with social media more than most, but there's no way that's going to sway a team, or at least it's going to factor into their opinion, unless you really have an old school guy making the decisions now. But I don't think that's the case. And I think he's just also, I have him top 10 on my board. I really love McCain.
Interesting. Okay.
I love him as a player. I love the personality. The teammates always love him. And assuming that he can convince you that the TikTok stuff's not going to distract from his work ethic, which he's too bright of a kid to let that happen. I don't think that's going to play a role in his draft stock.
Okay, yeah, that would have been my only question. Like, I don't care about any of the other stuff. Like, everyone's personality is unique, and that's, he seems like a very gregarious kid, and like that's a great thing. I think it's more just most of the kids who are big on social media, it's because of basketball. Like, they're putting up mixtapes, they're doing all different types of things basketball wise. He's doing other stuff on social media that's not basketball, which I could tell you from someone who does a lot of that stuff. That stuff takes a lot of time, and that ain't easy to do. So, he's obviously built up a big following already, but I trust him from what you've, seen of him and guys you've talked to, that if you feel like he can handle it, then he can handle it. And that's not an issue for me. I was just, curious about what team.
So I'm sure, I wouldn't be surprised if they do address it during interviews and stuff. And they're going to be like, you got to cut down on it because you have to spend more time in the gym and all that stuff.
Right.
And, they'll address it with him, and I'm sure he's going to be like, whatever you say. I don't think he's going to fight back. I don't think he's going to, not listen to the executives and stuff. Like, he's going to do what they say. He's too sharp of a kid.
Last thing on him. Do you see him more as a lead guard, or do you see him more as a two guard in the NBA?
Him as Emmanuel Quickly. I think that's the best guy.
Okay.
I think you could put him on there off the ball, highly efficient in pick and roll situations with like his pacing, his command. He's got a great floater. He's got good vision. He improved his finishing since high school, like incredible amount. And he can shoot off the dribble. So I love him on the ball. Obviously, he's a very good spot up shooter. So I don't really think it matters. And again, I love guys with, it's going to sound weird, but like strong legs. He's got like these thick, strong legs. I think it'll help him guard up a little bit, guard some two guards. So I don't think it matters. I think it just depends on who he's drafted to, who his backcourt partner is going to be. But I wouldn't even give him a label. I think he'll play interchangeably on and off the ball.
Yeah, I love me some Quickly, so I love that comp. All right, now that we got all the main guys out of the way, let's give the people what they want, and let's talk about Bronny James. I don't want to bury the lead here. I want to ask, is he a legit prospect? I know he's mocked in the mid-second round, so usually when you see guys like that, usually they're not big-time prospects. Obviously, he's LeBron's son, so it's a little different. But do you think that he could develop into a good NBA player, or do you think he's really just being drafted because he's LeBron's son?
I think he's got a chance. I don't have him in my top 60. I wouldn't draft him personally. I don't think he's. I think he's a super long shot. I just don't. What does he do? What does he do? I'm not really sure what he's good at from an NBA level. I love the kid. I mean, he's super impressive in terms of what he's gone through and how he's handled everything. And those are the type of guys you would want to bet on. And obviously he has the blueprint on what he's supposed to do to maximize his potential. But from a basketball evaluation standpoint, as a guy who's 6'1" in socks, who shot 27% from three, who's not really a point guard, I just don't know what he does. I'm not really sure. There is a pathway if he really becomes like a 38%, 40% 3-point shooter. And he came into college known for his shooting. So it's possible that this year was very fluky. Obviously, he started late because of the heart condition.
Right.
And they put him in a shitty role off the ball the whole time where it's hard to really generate any rhythm or confidence when you're just standing around a lot. And so, I'm sure he's a better shooter than what the numbers suggest. But I think at 6'1" in socks, the margin for error is so small. He's got to be a knockdown shooter. And I do think his defense is very good. Like, he's going to be a guy who can definitely be a plus defender, even at the NBA level. But you got to bring something offensively. And even at 6'1" to just be a shooter, I say the best case is like a Miles McBride.
Yeah.
It was like a 6'1" 3-and-D guy.
Is he that good on defense, though? Do you think?
I mean, I wouldn't say
potential.
He's not as good as McBride, but he's very quick and he's very smart. And the sample size of watching him on defense is so small, so it's hard to really give you confidence and say like lockdown defender at the NBA level. Like, can he potentially be that? He definitely has the foot speed, and he definitely has the brains to be a very good point guard defender. But that's just not enough at that size. You need more than that to stick in the NBA. You can't be a 6'1" guard and not bring anything offensively.
Yeah.
And so
I know you said it earlier, and I agree with you. You can't take much stock in guys shooting 1-on-0 in the gym. But did he help himself at the combine at all in terms of his shooting? Since he obviously I think he shot like 21 of 25 or something on that one day.
I was right. I was sitting on the court when he did it, and it was impressive because it was a movement shooting drill. And I've seen him plenty in high school. Like, he can make shots. He's a shot maker. He's got beautiful form, but I don't know. I need to see the results. Like, I just haven't seen the results at a level that I need to really have the confidence in saying, okay, NBA shooter. And again, at that size, you can't just be okay. You have to be better than okay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he had the medical issue, like you said, at USC, and that could have played into him struggling and the role that he was in, all those things that happens a lot. We've seen that a million times with kids, but you got to see it, and it's guesswork at this point. Are you, from what you're hearing from NBA teams, is it pretty much Lakers that are the Lakers pretty much the team that's going to draft him? Is there any chance that any other team will draft him, will take a chance on him?
I don't see how you draft. He's just not good enough to deal with all the shit that's going to come. And I shouldn't say shit, but because it's not his fault or anything. With all the attention, there's going to be pressure to play him. The storylines on your team are going to be distracting because they're going to be about your 15th man instead of what's actually happening. Like, he's not worth it to draft.
There's no better guy than JJ Redick for that job.
Yeah, right.
Well, also, like, Rich Paul is kind of not. I mean, I understand they're doing this methodically and they're trying to get him playing time, but he's really not doing him any favors by saying like he's not going to sign a two-way. He's going to be he wants to be a rotation player. Like, to me, and I understand he's using his leverage, which he should, to get drafted. But to me, when you're someone who came off a bad college season, who's undersized, who doesn't really bring a discernible skill to the NBA right now, you should kind of just take I think developing in the G League might be the best path for him, And I feel like they're kind of pigeonholing him into like he has to play because he's LeBron's son.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds delusional, to be honest.
Yeah.
His agent, but he's trying to create this narrative that there's interest in him, and there just isn't. I mean, I haven't talked to one team that said, and I have to ask because I hate even asking them. It kills me to ask them, but because he's such a big traffic getter on social media, and like my bosses are always like, anything you get on LeBron James, let's see. So I just have to ask them, and they basically, in the nicest way possible, just like, we're not interested. We just don't see it. So I can't imagine another team taking him. I can't imagine the Lakers. Imagine how big of a slap in the face it would be to LeBron if he's on the board at 55 and the Lakers don't take him. I mean,
they're obviously going to take him at 55.
They have to take him at 55. Even though I know there are probably scouts in LA who are like, this is bull. I spent my whole year looking for second round gems, and we're going to be forced to take somebody. But they're going to take him. Pelinka's going to go out there and say, we really believe in his basketball abilities. I'm sure there's going to be something about like, this is a special thing that we're doing here. It's a rare thing to have this type of relationship on our team, and he's a great kid and all that stuff. But from a basketball perspective, I personally don't I don't see it.
Yeah, I agree. And especially these days when you can get great, like really good players in the second round if you develop them correctly. And the Knicks are a great example, who we'll talk about next, but the Knicks are a great example. They've done that time and time again in the past couple of years. But do you think he only worked out for the Suns so it looked like it wasn't a lock to the Lakers? Or do you think he thought the Suns, since they are so over the cap, might be a good opportunity for him to actually get in the rotation?
I think the big thing with agents these days is one thing Rich Paul wasn't lying about is they don't really care where these guys get picked. Because if you get picked to a shitty team or a bad situation, the next 4 years could be thrown out the window. I mean, like, it's more important to go to a spot where you're going to get an opportunity to develop. So whether you're the 31st pick or the 58th pick, it doesn't really matter as long as you go to the right team. And so I do think that Rich Paul is going to try and steer him to a team where he knows he's going to get a chance. He knows the coaching staff, and obviously he has a relationship with the Lakers. So he's only going to pick a couple teams. He probably knows that deep down that if nobody else, none of the other preferred teams like Phoenix, if Phoenix doesn't take him, he'll just go to the Lakers and everything will be fine. Right. So they're not going to let the Charlotte Hornets take him.
So they're not going to torpedo him into if someone wants to take him higher than the Lakers, you think Rich Paul's going to they're going to let that fly more so than just making sure he gets to the Lakers?
He's going to tell teams, do not. That's a big thing, by the way. These agents tell teams not to take my guy. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
So they're definitely going to do that with Bronny. And there's not going to be any team that's like, sorry, he's too good, we have to take him. That's just not going to happen.
Completely forgot the LeBron James Jones connection, which is probably why he worked out for Phoenix. But yeah.
Good talk.
All right. Before we finish up, let's switch gears to our Knicks. Okay. I know obviously the Knicks have 3 picks in this draft. To me, they need to come out of this draft with 2 players. That's my opinion. Now, the Knicks, as we know in the previous years, they love to punt draft picks. Okay, they do that as well as anyone, and we know Tibbs doesn't love to play young players and all these different types of things. But I think, obviously they had a lot of injuries this year, which played into kind of the roles guys were playing at the end of the year. But their back end of their bench with Diakite and Jaquan Jeffries and Toppin and all these guys, they're not really NBA level players. So I feel like they could use a couple guys in this draft who are NBA level players that you could get, you can put in the game if necessary. So with that said, like, what are you hearing from them? Like, I've been hearing, they might trade both picks. Maybe they'll package into one. Who knows? What are you hearing and what they may do with these picks, and kind of what are they going to take anyone? And, that's the first part. Second part of the question is, I saw in your mock, you have them taking Ryan Dunn and Holmes. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't know either of those guys if they walked into my living room right now. So you're going to have to tell me a little. You're going to have to tell me a little bit about them, because I wouldn't know anything about them. And so, first part, what are you hearing of what they're going to do with the picks? Second part, tell me a little about those players and kind of who do you like more of those two?
Is that Ryan Dunn in your kitchen back there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there he is. Yeah, Ryan Dunn.
He's guarding your fridge.
And that's what he guards anybody. That's his specialty. He's like an incredible defensive player. And I think that right now, for the past month, I've had the Knicks taking him. I know he worked out for them. Doesn't mean a ton, but people around the league think that the Knicks are pretty high on him. He's a Tibbs guy. He's one of the best defensive wing prospects I've scouted in 10 years. Offensively, he's just a finisher. And, typically for a 6'8" big wing, or I think he's probably a power forward in the NBA. You hope he offers a little bit more, but he's so good defensively that I think he can literally just carve out a career as a defensive specialist. And he's one of the best athletes in the draft. So that's the selling point to him. But what do I think they're going to do? I think they're going to make one of those picks. I can't picture them taking on 2 rookie contracts. I think maybe they would either punt one of them, maybe for a future protected first round pick. They have 38 right there, so they're probably not going to bring 3 rookies into camp.
I think they need to take 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, 2 of the 3. And then at least with the 38 one, you don't even have a guaranteed contract there. So
right.
It would make sense to use one of your first 2 first rounders and then pick at 38, because the guy you're picking at 38 is probably in the same tier as the guy you're picking at 25 anyway.
For sure.
So I don't know who they're interested in terms of those 2 picks, but it does sound like there's at least interest in Ryan Dunn. He's also a Long Island guy, played at Lehigh. And so I'm sure there's some familiarity there. And of course, like I just said, like his defensive playmaking rates are unheard of. I don't think I've ever found a guy who blocks as many shots and gets as many steals as Dunn does at his size, at his position. So he's a lot of fun to watch. You just have to accept the fact that he is not going to make any jump shots for you. He's not going to do much ball handling.
The new CBA being so restrictive would change the Knicks' plans, because I feel like in previous years they probably would not even maybe just take the second round pick. But do you think the new CBA and how restrictive it is with roster building and the fact that they're going to have to pay a lot of these guys in the next year or two, you think that changes their thinking in terms of how many rookies are going to bring in?
Yeah, definitely, especially because they're probably not even going to play them.
Right.
Like they're going to be options for the Knicks if, the first 5 guys get hurt like they did this year, which was really a fluke thing. Like, I actually think the Knicks are deep. They just had so many ridiculous injuries that at some point you have to actually pay attention to the guys like Quan Jeffries and see if they play. But on a normal year, you don't have to go that deep into your bench.
They had 12 playable guys.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the biggest strengths of their team. But that's definitely going to play a role, and one of the reasons why I don't think they're going to take on 2 first-round contracts.
So do you think it's possible they could trade both picks in the first round?
Unless if there's like a specific target, maybe they try and move up with both picks. I know it's going to be hard to move up this year because, everybody's kind of like in that same tier. Like, teams are not going to want to. I'm not really sure what they're going to do. I really don't know. They could go. Leon goes in so many different directions, and I don't really know who their specific targets are. Like, the guy that they really want could be there at 24. So I have no idea. I know that there's some level of interest in Dunn, and you can get creative with those 3 picks. I just have no clue of how they're going to play it.
All right, so I'm going to give you the GM hat. I'm giving you the Knicks GM hat. I don't care what they're going to do or what you think they're going to do. I want to know what you would do at 24-5 and 24-25 if you were the Knicks GM. Who? Can you hear me?
Wait, I got frozen out once you gave me the hat.
Okay, you're ready. You have the hat. You still have the hat.
All right, so I'm picking for the Knicks?
You're picking for the Knicks at 24-25. I want to know who you would take. I don't care what the Knicks would do. Who would you take?
All right, I really like Jalen Tyson from Cal. He is a big, strong wing, 3-level scorer who could be in that range, and is simply just the best player available, which that's my strategy. I mean, I know teams worry about fit and all that stuff, but like, you get 2 shots to get a steal here, and I'm going with the best player available in each one. So I would take Jalen Tyson from Cal, and let's see. I really like, I don't know if he's going to be on the board, but he's slipping a lot. Nikola Topic, who tore his ACL, and I hear he's slipping. His draft range is all over the place, but Topic is a 6'6" playmaker who put up crazy numbers in the pro league overseas, and if he falls far enough, I think it's a great value pick. Somebody who may not play this year, but I think if there's one thing the Knicks are missing, behind Jalen, like is a facilitator. I love McBride coming off the bench, but he's not a guy who's going to run offense for you.
Agreed.
And so I love the idea of Topic, whose biggest strength is really just setting guys up.
Yeah, and we had CP the franchise on a couple weeks ago. We actually touched on Jalen Tyson as a guy that he wants an upperclassman wing kind of guy, and he was a guy that we touched on. So that's interesting.
Who are your biggest? Give us like 3 big sleepers you think that could come out of this draft and be really good players.
I like Jonathan Mobo from San Francisco, who imagine if Kenneth Faried can pass and handle the ball. He's just a very unique type of player. And I love athleticism, rebounding, crazy motor, and then it'll get you 4 assists a game. Like, I just love that combination of a big man who could pass. Baylor Shireman from Creighton, who could be in play for the Knicks. He just worked out for the Knicks, actually. Could be in play at 24-25. Ideally, you'd get him at 38, but he may not be there. But he's somebody who I think is going to be.
He's a solid player, I think. I agree. I liked him.
Like Joe Ingles, like just a long-term shooter who's going to play some pick and roll for you. So I'm a fan of his. I really like AJ Mitchell also from Santa Barbara. He's kind of like the poor man's Jalen Brunson, who, you're like, oh, how is this guy going to make it? He's not quick. He's not athletic. He plays below the rim. This guy just gets to his spots, and he's very crafty, and he hits tough shots. And to me, he's somebody I would love to take a swing on in the second round.
Do you like Shannon at all from Illinois?
I do, not necessarily like the 23 point per game scorer that he was in Illinois, but it's a guy who's just going to give you speed, change of pace, put pressure on the rim, and then occasionally he'll get hot. He's got, I'm not sure I'm buying the shooting the way we saw it this year. Finally, after 5 years, he started to make jump shots. But like, I do love I love how he can put pressure on the defense with how fast, explosive he is. He's got great defensive tools. He should be a very good defender. So I have a first round grade on Shannon, but I'm not sold that he's like like a go-to scoring type. I think he's more of like, let's just take advantage of the open floor because I'm so much faster and more explosive than everyone else.
And actually, I agree with you. I think I could go either way with him, but I think he's got a lot of potential offensively. If you hit, he's one of those guys I can see late, early second round, late first round that becomes a good NBA player that, maybe everyone's like, oh, we should have drafted him in the top 17 or top 16. But actually, one of my favorite guys in the draft, he's a top 15 pick, really. What I've been seeing him mocked is De Silva from Colorado. He plays so hard. Like, he's a dog, in my opinion. Like, I just love all the things that he could do on the court. I feel like he could do so much on the court. Are you a fan of his?
Yeah, De Silva is. I had a conference call with early in maybe the first month of the season with the whole front office, and they asked me, who's one guy that you think by the end of the season is going to deserve more love? And that was my guy early in the season, like the first month, Justin De Silva. He's so polished. And he is like off the floor, very like cultured and smart. And that kind of shows on the floor as well. He knows the game. He's super mature. He doesn't take bad shots. He's a plug and play guy, 6'8" shooter, very skilled and polished, and a very safe pick. I think he's going to get looks in the late lottery, but he's not going to fall outside the top 20. I really like De Silva. Very, very safe. Reminds me a little bit like if Kuzma was smart.
I like De Silva a lot. Okay, before we let you get out of here, I have one last question, then we'll get to the shot clock question, because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Jared Dubin wanted me to ask you about a player, and since I spend...
Yes, Keyshawn George.
Exactly.
It was the most obvious player of all time for him to ask you about.
Yeah.
Since I spent most of my time annoying him about everything else, I figured I'd throw him a bone. So just give us a little bit on Keyshawn George.
The idea of him is fun. I'm not sure if I'm buying in. In fact, if I had to pick one guy who I think is overrated right now, is Keyshawn George. Like the idea of him is he's a 6'8" guard who shot 40% from three, and he can handle the ball a little bit. I'm just not buying the creation. It's like inside the arc, it's like he's got weights tied to his legs. I just can't. He lacks so much explosiveness. Like, I feel like Morelli, you could block his shot, and he's 6'8".
I can get up a little. I still got it.
Still got it? That's good to know.
I don't think you've seen him play in a couple of years, so I think you might retract that if you see him on the court.
I've taken a couple of years off, so no one's seen me play in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't even attempt 2-point shots in my games anymore.
You still play?
Yeah, I do play. I play when I can once a week in like a pickup game with some of your boys, actually, I think.
Yeah. I used to play and once a week in those pickup games. It's just like I was like I sprained my ankle a couple times. I was like, you know what? Like I just don't want to get it. I don't want to be out for 6 weeks. And
I can't afford it.
Yeah, no, I used to play also, and I saw someone tore their Achilles, and the next week someone tore their ACL, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm finished here.
That's why I just spot up. I'm good with that.
All right, so let's get to the shot clock question. So we got Jon Wasserman on the shot clock. Here's the big question of the day. Which player will end up being the best player out of this draft? Not the number one pick, but who will be the best player in this draft? All right, 24 seconds on the clock, 8 seconds each. You do not get extra time. You are not special. John, since you are special, you will go first. Are you ready? All right. Your 8 seconds starts now.
Ignite, one of the most explosive players who's improved his ball handling, creation. He's not a great shooter, but he's a shot maker. He's 18 years old.
I was going to say Dalton Connect, but throughout this podcast, John has sold me on Reed Shepherd. So I'm going to go Reed Shepherd. He's a great athlete for his size, great shooter.
Both eyes I was going to take, John sold me not on. So I'm going to take Stephon Castle, even though he told me he's not going to be great either. But I think he's going to figure the shooting. So, Was, tell me who you said again, because you jumped in a little early before it started. So which player did you take?
Ron Holland from Ignite.
Wow.
Ron Holland, okay.
Oh, yeah, because he broke his hand midway through the year, right? So he was out for basically the second half of the year.
He had like a thumb ligament thing, but
yeah,
he was my number one guy entering the season. And then he dropped 20 a game at 18 years old in the G League on 46%, which isn't that bad. And because he didn't shoot a high percentage from three, people jumped off the wagon. But like 18 years old, I think his shot is correctable enough to the point where even if he's league average, he's such a good scorer otherwise that I think getting to a league average 3-point mark is enough for him to be a 20-point scorer and a wing stopper defensively.
Do you think he's going to go in the top 10?
He's going to be right on the edge there. I know some teams that like him right in the back end of that top 10.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. One thing I was going to do before we got out of here was read you a couple of our text exchanges about previous drafts of the last few years and see how you did with some of your predictions. Number one, we're going to go through three of them. The first one you did well on. I said, hey, bro, hope all is well with you. Just watched the video with you and Begley. Good insight on Toppin. You warmed me a bit to him, but I still have my concerns. Should I be okay with that if that's the direction the Knicks went? You said, he's not a franchise changer, but I picture a productive John Collins type. That's not bad.
Yep. That isn't bad.
That's not bad. He's
especially this year, he turned into more of that type because he shot 40% from three this year. John Collins is not a good defensive player, but he's a decent shot blocker. So I feel like that's where he is lacking, but I like it.
Honestly, I thought it was going to be worse than that. I'll take that.
Number two, I said, I'm trying to tell my brother that Suggs is the second best prospect in the draft, but he won't listen. He likes Mobley more. You said most do, but I think Suggs is special. Scout calls him the NBA's Russell Wilson. Now, I don't think at that point anyone wants to be the Russell Wilson. That's not as much on you. That's on the scout. But
I remember
he had a good year this year. He had a much better year this year. He wasn't great his first year. He got better his second. He had a good year this year. So I think that's incomplete. I think I'm going to give you an incomplete on that. But NBA's Russell Wilson, I think we should talk to that scout.
I'm going to give myself the win for that one.
I still get the idea of that, but he's not going to be like your lead quarterback of your offense. But I do think that Suggs is going to be a very good player.
And he had a really good year this year. And I think really, the Magic and the Pistons are two of those teams that when you get drafted to them, they don't have great developmental systems. Now the magic of a good coach, maybe that plays into it and the role he's playing. And I always like Suggs' intangibles as well. So I think I agree with you.
As Orlando gets better, like the other guys around him get better, it's only going to bring his game up more. Right. He's not, I was thinking he was going to be I get that. Now I totally forgot about the Russell Wilson thing, but like the idea of him being a lead point guard is kind of lost. I've lost that. And that kills his value a little bit, but I do think he's going to be a very valuable starter on a good team.
Okay, last one. Here's the last one. Here's the funniest one. Okay. You said I'd trade multiple firsts and either IQ or Obi to get Jaden Ivey, which is what Begley says the offer would need to start at. I said agreed. We're in the same boat. In my opinion, if Ivy hits his ceiling, he's Dwayne Wade. Now, I would say one thing, and then you could jump in. Without Cade Cunningham on the floor, he was a different player, especially at times this year. And he's shown flashes of being a really good, like that type of player. The Oladipo, the obviously Wade would be the highest end of that, but the Oladipo type of player. I think that's also incomplete. I still think he can be that, but Detroit is just not a great, it's just never been a great spot for guys to develop. And when they already have Cade, and with Cade on the floor, he's just not the same player. What do you think? Yeah,
I'm not out on Ivy. I mean, Dwayne Wade? No.
That was me. Dwayne Wade was on me.
But it's because their team is so bad, it's hard to even say good things about Ivy, but I'm not out on him. I think he still has a chance to be a good player. What did I say? I would trade Ivy and picks. I would trade IQ and picks.
IQ and two and multiple firsts.
Quickly or Toppin and two firsts.
Well, I probably wouldn't trade multiple firsts unless they were like protected or late first. I would still take Ivy over quickly. I think there's maybe not. Maybe not. I didn't get to watch quickly when he was in Toronto, so I don't know what he looked like when he was more of a
when he got a chance.
When he was. Yeah, I saw the stats. So maybe quickly will be better than Ivy, but I'm not out on Ivy yet. It's too early to pull the plug on that.
I agree. Also incomplete. All right, listen, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much. We love you, and we'd love to have you on after the draft and once the guys get drafted and we see what free agency does and we can talk about all that. But thanks for taking a couple minutes this morning. We really appreciate it.
All right, sounds good, fellas. This was fun.
All right, check out Was on Bleacher Report. He's the best in the business. There's no one else you should listen to. Don't even go to another website. Go to Bleacher Report.
Well, go to Twitter and then go to his profile. That's the other website you can go to.
Social media. What's your plug? Your socials, just for that.
Yeah, NBA Draft Was, and then next week I'll be doing I'm the lead analyst on NBA TV for their draft coverage.
Oh, awesome.
Beautiful. We'll tune in.